Hi, good morning. Today is February 24, 2026, and it is 10:22 a.m. U.S. Central Time. My name is Rinaldo J. Aguilar Marcano, and this would be demo D113. Um, and I'm doing it driving, um, unlike the previous one. So I have a few things for today, but I have my talking points and everything. So there's that. So that yellow. Sorry for jumping right into it, but this yellow truck is a marker, right? It's a visual marker for the satellite to tell them, I'm here. And I'll tell you in a bit more about that. There's another truck you will see in this recording in the channel 7. You will see around probably 10:20, 10:20, 10:19 a.m. on I-10. You will see a yellow. I don't know how to pronounce that company name, and I apologize, but it's something like Pinsky. It's a rental company that is the colors are yellow. It's a specific tone of yellow, very similar to that van. And that they had a truck like that in the I-10 tracking me ahead, and as soon as I reached the same position, I mean, it was next to me, then the truck speed, broke away from me, because the goal was to mark me, right, visually, not using radio frequency or electronics, but using visible light, right, for the satellite. And then after I took the tollway, then they brought this other van on the same color and did the same thing, right? And now it exits. You see, it's going over there. It's exiting on the exit towards the Sam Houston. I'm gonna get behind it to see if I can catch up with it. So I'm gonna exit here to see if I can catch up. To get the plate because I did not get it. So anyhow, I have a few technical things that I didn't mark in my talking points. I didn't write them, so I might forget. So I'll start with that, okay? And I apologize for not being very well organized today. Um, so let's start with the technical things. So one thing that I've been meaning to mention, and I haven't, is that these observations about the vehicles that are working on the ground, like basically this tier system, this hierarchical distributed system of espionage that they have, right? What I call the Mueller Muppet. That's the name I give to that system. So the observation of the L2s being gray and all that, right? I haven't really said it, but I want to formalize it here. So this technique is not, this is not something that they invented for this or that I'm just hypothesizing, right? Like this is a formal concept in information retrieval systems that are distributed. And this is called sharding. That's the technical name of this technique. And the idea is you create a mathematical function or a logic function, really, that assigns objects, documents, right? Could be in this case cars or agents to a specific bucket, and you bucket them in a specific way, right? In a way that is deterministic. So if you know the features or the characteristics of the object, you know in which bucket it will fall under, right? And this is a fundamental principle of, yeah, so I got the truck. It has a 505 marker, like a number, and the plate is Victor X-ray Bravo 2180. Victor X-ray Bravo 2180. And it's a Ford. It's a van, like oversized windows and all that. But it's yellow, on the same tone of yellow as the Pinsky trucks. Um, so anyhow, at this point I should probably tell everybody that I'm going to the FedEx to send another letter to the clerk of the Supreme Court because they haven't docketed the thing, right? The amended emergency application that we know already that passed the formatting rules, and I already explained that I cannot seek recourse on the Court of Appeals. So let's see what they do, but they haven't docketed, they haven't rejected it, so I'm going to send another letter. Okay, but back to the technical topics that I have. So this technique is called sharding. Okay, and the idea is you have a logic function or a mathematical function, and you can deterministically, so this function, the job of this function is to map features of an object to a shard, okay, to a bucket. So that way you have all the objects bucketed in one bucket, and this is a foundational principle of information retrieval. I mean, all the information retrieval systems that are distributed are based on this principle because it allows you to partition a problem, a big problem, into small pieces, right? And then you can work on the pieces with, realistic resources. You don't have to attack the entire problem. It's a divide and conquer approach, and the tool to divide is the sharding, right? So this is what they're doing. They have, say 10,000 cars in Katy. So instead of managing all the 10,000 cars, they partition them, and then they say, well, the silver sedans are going to be a shard, right? So the silver sedans with the plate that start with V as in Victor, that's a shard. And that shard has a function, okay? And that is a sharding mechanism. The white, compact cars, like the white Tesla Model Ys, are another shard. And that shard has a function, right? So this is really called sharding. This is not something that they invented for espionage. This is, Google is based on this principle. It's an indexing technique. The reason I'm saying this, for two reasons. One is to, formally say here that this is an information retrieval concept, right? It's not the technique of espionage, really. It's just that they repurpose it for this, right? And the second thing that I want to tell you is that, and this is more, I think this is where they put a twist on it, right? And I'm saying this based on data. I'm not going to get too much into the details, but this thing I'm going to tell you is based on data, hard data. The twist that they give to this is that the shards are stable, but the function is not, right? And this is a theory, but I'm pretty sure, I'm 90% sure of this, that this is what they're doing, right? So the and I'm going to tell you this because it has implications on the hardware side of things. So the shards are stable, but the function of the shard is not, meaning they can change the function of the shard. So for example, the gray vehicles could be level 2s. I'm going to give you an example, right? I don't know if this is exactly what they're doing or if it's at will. But you can make the function. So I guess, it's another kind of sharding, right? And I know this sounds complicated, but I'm just trying to frame this in a way that makes the most sense, and it's the most abstract manner that you can apply it in different contexts, right? But imagine that you have, I think in reality, if you want to abstract it at the highest level, it would be like this. You, instead of having one sharding function, you have two sharding functions. You have one sharding function for the object, and you have one sharding function for the function of the object. So what is the function that object performs, right? So for example, let me give you an example that, it shows the power of this technique. And this is for maximum confusion, right? To create confusion on the opponent. So the sharding function for the objects could be, the gray sedans whose plate start with V as in Victor, okay? And the sharding function could be, what day is today? Today is Tuesday, okay. So if it's a Saturday, the function of that shard is going to be level 2. But if it's a Tuesday, the function of that shard is going to be level 1. You see? So you can change what that group of vehicles do based on the day of the week, right? So this will make the pattern harder to recognize. You see? So, to recognize it, you will have to have somebody like me who is exposed to this, who has the tools to see it, to record it, and also that can figure out with software that this co-occurrence only happens on Saturdays, right? So it's a lot of conditions to meet. But unfortunately for them, I've met them, right? So some of the shards change function, not all of them. Like for example, the red vehicles don't change. There is no sharding function for the function of the shard for the red vehicles. The red vehicles are always intelligence, right? Or law enforcement. The bizarro law enforcement that they have. But the gray sedans can change function. Some days they could be level 2, some days they could be level 1. Some days they could be level 3. Some days they could be taggers, right? And this is what I was saying at the beginning, that this has implication on the hardware, because this means that the hardware is really flexible. I thought before that, the hardware was so specialized that only the gray sedans had, but no, like they're not restricting it by hardware, they're restricting it by software. So it means that all the vehicles or all the phones, I don't know, it could be that if they change the function, they do it really with the phones. But what this really means is that all vehicles are capable of pretty much anything, right? It depends on what they assign it to. It's a software constraint. It's not a hardware constraint. So this is it's very exciting for me to see this, right? To be able to see this, because they really, really thought about this problem, right? So in the case of today, the level 2s are the white vehicles, not the gray vehicles, right? Of course, it could be that they switched them because I already spotted the gray vehicles, so they made a hard-coded change in the system, right? And maybe I am, what I'm trying to say, maybe I am, how do you say this? Maybe I am overestimating their capabilities, right, of design. I mean, of Elon Musk and Travis Kalanick, right? That they thought of this sharding of function, not only of object, years ago, right? Maybe it's not the case. It's just that they hard-coded the function recently because I spotted the gray ones. It's possible, right? But because they did it so quick, and because of the data that I'm seeing in the pipelines, it seems like the function is really sharp, right? It's not always the same function. But anyhow, if authorities listen to this at some point, please bear that in mind, and don't focus too much on the features, because the function of that set of features could change depending on the day of the week, for example, or the time of the day. So it could be, they could shard it by hour, by morning versus afternoon, things like that. So you would see a very different behavior in the morning than in the afternoon, right? But today, the vehicles that are level 2 are white, and the visual taggers are not green, are yellow. You see? So they changed the scenario of the two things. Like last week, they were green. That day that I recorded a bunch of taggers with the colors, they were tagging me with green objects. But today, they're tagging me with yellow objects. So that on itself is interesting. So what I'm gonna do, to not, because I have my talking points organized, but because I started talking about technical topics, I'm gonna continue talking about technical topics. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of change the order of what I had planned. So, for example, the white car that I have on the back is, a level 2, right? So let's give him the chance to crown, to earn his reward. So it's X as in X-ray, T as in Tango, L as in Lima, 7334, and it's a BMW 320i. And the man, well, it's a couple, because they are on level of coercive and level 2 probably, right? So he's wearing a baseball cap. He's exiting right now. He's a man, maybe early 30s, two men really, early 30s. They look Venezuelan, to be honest with you. The one on the passenger side, more so. Yes. So today, for sure, is the whites are the level 2s, right, as you can see, obviously. So of course, my countermeasure is to always get next to a dark car, not a white car. Now that I'm speaking of this, I also have to tell you that the black cars, of course, are the less flexible because of their color, right? Objects that are black, it means that they don't reflect light. They absorb light, right? All the light, all the spectrum. That's why they're black. So this means that these objects are harder for them to categorize with cameras, with simple vision cameras, or even with infrared cameras. So this means that they can't rely on the dark vehicles too much for things that are sensitive to location, like tagging or listening. So, if you want to be on the safe side, what you have to do is stand next to a black vehicle. Like this would be safer in general. Unless they change it, but then they would lose precision, which would also be good, right, for me in this situation. Yeah, so also on the technical topics, I want to tell you, see, there's a white vehicle here, probably that, yes, black objects, yellow, yeah. So Victor B as in Victor, P as in Papa, X as in X-ray, 7759. So one pattern today, I don't know if this is one of the charts, right? But one point today is to be that these white vehicles could be trucks, could be anything, but they have an X as in X-ray in the plate and a V as in Victor. Right. So these are the two characters that repeat, and they're white. Right. So this could be the features that define the shard that they're using today for level 2. All right. Let's keep going. Right. So the next technical topic is that after last week I think it was, right, where I saw that, or maybe 10 days ago, I don't know, where I saw that they were using objects of bright color to encode the seeds for the encryption keys, right? For them to be seen from a satellite that gets sent to China, and that's the way they manage the encryption keys. So so this woman is getting me with the phone, you see, but it's a dark car. So the car is not equipped to do this, but she did it with the phone. So this is Lima Charlie Victor 7011, and note that it has the V as in Victor in the plate. So I mean, this is interesting, right? So the phones are more capable than some of the cars. That's what it means. Anyhow. Yes, so after I discovered and documented that, something happened at Lake Point State, is that the visual encoding of the keys stopped. Meaning, before, if you look at the recorders, where I'm talking to authorities, right? When you eventually get the recordings, you will see that these trucks would pass in front of my house with these objects of bright color on the attachment that they had, the trailer, right, that they were carrying on the back, as clockwork. Like this was a coordinated dance all day. Like this was all day, literally. Every, I don't know, 30 minutes or so, one of these trucks with all these objects, bright color in the trailer, would come and drive in front of my home, right? I mean, they weren't really driving in front of my home. They were driving in front of the house. They were changing the keys, right, for everybody at Lake Point Estates every 30 minutes or so. And sometimes it would happen that it would be multiple vehicles, right, going to different houses, because they use different keys. I think the keys are shared among multiple houses, but the keys are shared, right, but not among everybody. So like Point States, say that they're working with, I don't know, 30 houses that are actively communicating. So, some of the houses, like Robert Mueller, will have a different key than his neighbors, like something like that. Like the special people will have different keys, right? Anyhow, but after I documented this, they stopped with the trucks. Like the trucks, now they don't come driving through through the neighborhood, visible in the cameras. There's still some trucks with attachments, particularly today, but they don't have bright objects. So those are more like for intercepting the downlink, because if you have a large truck with a large attachment, like a trailer, you have a lot of area, right, that you can cover the ground with, and that gives you more exposure to radio frequency that is coming down. So that's a better way it's a better antenna in a way, right? So the larger the trailer, the larger the antenna. It's the idea, right? It's a probe. It's a radio frequency probe. But that's the function of those trucks these days, and they're not that frequent, right? It's only when I do important things for them. Like, for example, today, I logged into my Google account. The Google account that it's on I have a Google account that it's on a domain that is my first name, Rinaldo.ca. And that Google account, they all are, they're always trying to intercept the cookies, to get the cookies, because they want to delete data that I have in that account that is damaging to them, right? Because they think that that's the only copy I have. So that's what, I don't connect to that account very often, because obviously I don't want them to even, have a possibility to delete anything. But the times I do, they do the following. They immediately bring these large trucks with the trailer, and John Miko comes out speeding from his garage on the white compact SUV that he has. It's like, very consistent every time. And, authorities can check this, right? Like I imagine, you can ask Google for the logs of my connections, or the times that I've logged in, the timestamps, and you will see that John Miko, like clockwork, comes out of that house speeding, right? Speeding to get, like he's rushing to get into the hot corner of Gary Gray. But it's clockwork. Like it does, he never misses one. Like if I connect to that account, John Miko will come out, right? And he's one of these days, he's one of the few things that makes him come out. right? This is not coming out very often. He only does it when I connect to that account because of the level of risk, right, that they see in the environment. Because they're in a, cohort is level 2 or 3, I don't know. So, but if I connect to that account, John Miko comes out, right? Now, this lets me to understand that the best agent they have, I mean, not because of the agent, but because of the position of the house relative to the antenna, is John Miko. And I measured this with software, and I think it's because in that path of him going out of Lake Point, of his house, and then from Lake Point Estates using the exit, on that path, from that house is where you could maximize the exposure, the exposure time of the vehicle in the critical path. From any other house is lower. I guess what I'm trying to say, they have more chances of getting a sample or good samples using a vehicle exiting John Miko's house. That maximizes everything in terms of exposure to radio frequency on the downlink, of the downlink. So I think that's why he only used them for the important, what they consider the most important thing, right? So that also tells me that for this network, that Google account is the most important target, right? Because they only engage John Miko these days for that. So that's interesting. But the interesting observation is that they stopped with the rotation of the keys, right? Which, at the beginning I thought, well, maybe, this will make them more vulnerable, right? But I don't think that's what happened. Like, it's not like they stopped rotating the keys, they just moved the keys, right? So this brought me to look into, just as a thought exercise, to look, where they could have the keys for Robert Mueller at this point, right? Given that the state of emergency they are in, right? And like I hypothesize, this is dangerous. There's a police officer here, I don't know, okay, and a truck, okay. So yes, a second, because there's a lot of traffic. Yes, so this is what I did, right? Because I mentioned this before, right? And I've seen this do this before, right? When they want to encode something that is sensitive to them, like the crypto payments, what they do is that they change the sign of the latitude or the longitude, or like they have. And I know the sharding functions that they use, but I'm not going to get into those details here. But they change the sharding function, the same thing that I described before, by changing one of the signs in the latitude that they mark or the longitude that they mark in the geo index, right? So this is part of the encoders that they use. It's changing the sharding function for the function, right, of this geographical point. Negating one of the coordinates, for example, of the two coordinates, right? So this brought me to, because I know that they discontinued the use of the visual encryption seeds at Lake Point Estates, I hypothesized that they probably didn't discontinue, they moved them, right? So, I'm guessing that they moved them to other points that have an altered latitude or longitude, right? So, I'm going to give you the coordinates in the geo index that is the most likely location for the encryption key of Robert Mueller organically at Lake Point Estates. It would be latitude minus 95.806. No, sorry. I made a mistake there. Latitude 29.75965. Longitude minus 95.806.2667. That is where the encryption key would be organically, right? So this is a point next to Robert Mueller's house at Lake Point Estates. And it's marked on the index, and it has a score of 24,000 points, right, in the US. But so what I did, I started, playing with the signs of the latitude and the longitude to see what, where they would have moved them. Because as I explained before, they can't have a relational database to keep this information on, because that would be a single point of failure and would be prone to capture by the FBI. So what they can do is play with the sign, right? This way they don't need a database. So I started, playing with the signs and the location. I'm going to give you the locations, right? So I think the most likely one is if you change one of the signs. I think if you change the longitude, right? So if you make the coordinate be 29.75965 on latitude, longitude 95, positive 95.806.2667, that falls that coordinate falls in a very interesting point near the Tibet, right, in China, near the Tibet, in a mountain. And it's a very interesting place because it is located in a valley. So it's kind of surrounded by mountains, right? Tall mountains. So, I mean, the thing is on a mountain to begin with, but there's taller mountains surrounding this valley that it's on a mountain. I mean, and this is amazing because, nobody can see what is going on in there because of the altitude. You would need a helicopter that can fly at that altitude. And, like it's not easy to spy visually on that place. It's in China, basically, right? So it's protected by their borders. This valley creates a natural barrier that allows that radio frequency cannot be easily intercepted on the uplink or downlink. It's a fortress, visually speaking, and radio, on the radio frequency spectrum, it's a fortress, and it's in the Tibet, right, or near the Tibet, on the China side of things. So, I would suspect this is the most likely place where they could be encoding these visual keys at this moment for Robert Mueller, right? So I have the white follower behind me. Let's let him pass to get the plate. So this is the level 2, right? Okay, Michael Papa Romeo 7010. It's a Chevrolet Silverado older model. It doesn't have the V though, the Victor. The V as in Victor in the plate. So I don't know. It could be that it's not, right? It could be something else. But behaviorally, that seems like a level 2. Now, yes. So let me tell you. Yes. So visually speaking, this thing is a fortress, right? It's impossible to spy on this place, I imagine, right? Like, to be honest, I don't know. I don't know what the capabilities of the U.S. military are in this sense, right? I have no idea. So maybe they can do it, right? But, for any commercial actor or, probably most of the countries, this is, impossible to see the keys, the seats, right? So I'm guessing if I was to bet, if I was a betting man, I would put my money on that place. That's probably where the keys are. The other likely location is a point off the coast of Chile. Okay, that is also a likely location. I mean, if you change the other sign, so it would be if you make the latitude negative, right? But it's still on the western side of the planet. Right, but in South America, right? So this point falls off the coast of Chile. Now, I see that as a likely place for 2 reasons. One is because I've seen through the debugging process that I've done that more than a year, that there is a huge concentration of points in the geo index that fall in the coast of Chile. Like the coast of Chile is a very important place for the Chinese to communicate with this covert system that they have. It's a very important place, and that probably explains the proximity of Beijing to Chile, right? Like, I don't know if people, following this would know this, but like the commercially and, politically and diplomatically, like there's very big ties between Chile and China. And I think it's because of this reason, because China needs this place, right? This geographical place to maintain the network. It's a geopolitical strategic point for Beijing. That's what I think. For the network, topology. So this point happens to fall in the ocean next to this important cluster of points that they have marked in the geoindex. So this could also be here, right? Of course, they will have to encode this with a boat or something, right? But it's possible that they're putting it there, right? So these are the 2 more likely places. The other place falls on it falls off the coast of the western side of Australia. It's in the middle between Perth and a place or an island called St. Louis. It's right in the middle. So that's where the coordinate will fall. So it's also, a nautical point. So they would need a boat to do this, right? Or maybe a small array of boats. Like they could also encode this with boats, like having 4 boats, for example, instead of 4 grass cutters, they could have 4 boats, right? distinct color. But I imagine, right, this would be visible. But of all these places, the one that is more difficult to see for because it's not in international waters would be the one in Tibet, right? So that's why I think that's the place where Robert Mueller keys are being generated today. So I wanted to give you that. The other thing, it's another mini project that I'm working on based on all these observations is it's a hypothesis, but it seems to be the case. At this point, I have high confidence, like 75% confidence. It's about the driveways of the houses of the network. So they have certain houses that have driveways that are circular. For example, if you want to see an example, you can see Robert Mueller's driveway, okay? Or semicircular. I think his is semicircular. But another example is the driver of this gentleman that has the house next to mine at Lake Point State. I think his last name is Bellholm or Belmhorn. Let me see, I think I wrote it here. Yes, Bremholm. B-R-E-M as in Mike, H-O-L-M, right? So he is the one that owns the house, 2218 Britton Ridge Drive. And he's supposedly a realtor. So he also has a circular driveway. Okay, the theory is that they use these driveways. I mean, they're circular for a reason. This is not random. It's a way to encode information and also encryption keys by parking vehicles in a specific direction. So you see the fact that the driveway is circular, right, or semicircular, it allows them. It's semicircular really because the street will cut it in half, right? So this allows for orientation, right? So they can detect the orientation using the satellite of any object that is in that driveway, right? They can tell with the precision of something like 20 degrees in which direction it's looking, right? So depending on the color of the object, like a car, and the direction, that encodes a meaning. And if it's multiple cars, it encodes an encryption key. That's why at Robert Mueller's house, you will see that they have a bunch of cars in this driveway, right? It's an encoder for status and potentially even encryption keys, right? I mean, before, I don't think they would do this at this point because now everybody knows how they're encoding the keys. So they're not going to put it there, right? They would put them in the Tibet. But you know, it could also be used for encoding the encryption keys. Let me put this here. Right. Yeah, so you can see, like, if you measure this by software, and I will do this later today, but you will see that the distribution of white vehicles standing next to me is abnormal. Like at this point, I have four surrounding, right? White vehicles, and this didn't happen before. Right? This is something that is happening today. Before it was gray vehicles, right? Like last week. So there you can see, right? And the one on the back is a tagger because it's black. It's just following me to keep track of my location by proxy. Mhm. See, that's how you disable them. So yes, so those round driveways are important because they allow to encode statuses and also encryption keys. So you know the presence of a car in a particular direction has a meaning, and the presence or the absence even of cars has a meaning as well. Like for example, I can tell you on the Brenholm property, if there's no cars, it means they are on a warning state. Or you know when they get into a warning state, you know the coward is level basically. Then they remove the cars. So, but it's not that they're removing the cars because they're afraid that the cars are going to be seized. It's not that. They're removing the cars because the absence of the cars is an status, right? And the status is, you know, there's danger. Um, But also, if they have to, they park cars of two different colors in that driveway, white and silver. So if they park the silver, the other status I know is if they park the silver car, uh, if they park the silver car uh, facing I can tell you I mean, I haven't measured the azimuth of like the angle of this, but I could measure it, right? But I can tell you if the silver car is no, it's not silver. It's like golden. It's like gold. But it's an older vehicle. Like it looks like aged, right? Um, if they park it facing the Comcast Xfinity box, it means they are in normal operational state, meaning they are spying. Like for example, if I start giving a demo on using the Xfinity internet, that car will be parking that way, right? Because it means we're spying. If there's no cars, it means we see danger. And if there is a white car facing the house, not the Xfinity box, it means there's no danger, but we're not spying. Like we're disabled. We're turned off at the moment. Something like that, right? It signifies like an operational state, but not active. Something like that is what I can read from, and I can tell this because I know what they're doing, right? Uh, because I'm next door. So I can see the changes in the statuses, and I can correlate them to the changes in the situation, right? That I can see from my point of view. Right? Yes, I always wonder what do they have in this facility. It has to be something very important, but I haven't really checked. Mhm. Yes. Okay. You're here. Okay, so I'll stop this segment and then I'll create a new one. Yeah, so just a couple of comments. So one thing that informant told me, right? I mean, I knew this because of the index, but he confirmed that thing that is called Bar and Grill, it's a major logistical hub of the Venezuelan intelligence. Major, like it's kind of a dispatch center, right? That's why you always see these agents, tracking me from there. Uh, it's a major, major thing. But I'm just creating this small segment to record something that I thought after so this morning, right after I was describing the coordinates of, where the encryption keys of Robert Mueller could be, right? I was doing this exercise this morning, um, and I mentioned that I thought that the most likely place would be this area near the Tibet, the Tibet. I don't know how to pronounce it in English, to be honest. But near China, right? Within the borders of China, that it's basically a valley on the top of a mountain. That it's very protected. I mean, that thing is like a fortress, right? So this guy is really guarding the antenna, that antenna that is there. But anyhow, after I said that, right, like I think there is a deep, deep implication on that, because think about it, right, and this could also be a signal for detection, right, of important hubs. But think about it, and this is, what I say, the laws of physics, right? Like this is the thing that they can't defeat, and what always gives it away, right? I mean, what they're doing. Um, so, yes. So this is the thing, right? Like, what are the chances? Think about it, right? What are the chances that Lake Point Estates, this important gated subdivision, right, where Robert Mueller is located, where all these important people, Mark Swisher, this other guy, Larry Ryan, right? Like all these people live. Miller, right? One of the most prominent intellectual property attorneys, which are important to steal the technology companies, important for the for the Communist Party of China, right? He also lives there, right? But that's not the observation, right? The observation is, what are the chances that this compound, if you change the sign of one of the coordinates, it ends up being this super protected place with natural barriers, with natural physical barriers that are impossible to overcome near the Tibet, right? I mean, what are the chances of that, right? And I'm saying this because I think this, I mean, to me, at least, it hints that when Lake Point Estates was built 25 years ago, like even the choice of the coordinates was the choice, was the design, this design behind that, because it would allow for this technique of transmitting the keys using satellites, right? But it's also important because it puts a timeline to that technique. It means that this technique, it's dates at least 30 years ago, from 30 years ago, right, when Lake Point Estates was built, because they cannot move the coordinates. They cannot change the coordinate system of the planet. So I don't know. I think that thing. I mean, that coincidence, quote unquote, of Lake Point Estates coinciding with this super protected place in the Tibet by just changing the sign of one coordinate. It's interesting because it puts dates to many things, to the satellite system of sending keys, for example, right? Because we know when the compound was built, right? I mean, that can be looked into the records, right? Like when was the first house erected in that subdivision? By Liberty Homes, right? The company of the father of Damon Sachs, who was the employer of Penelope Suarez, the Venezuelan intelligence officer, right? When was the first house put in there? Because if they cared at that point about the coordinates coinciding, it's because they already had this system in place, right, to transmit the encryption keys in this way. I mean, 30 years ago, right? Which means that they already had the geo-index or an equivalent to it. Maybe it wasn't exactly the same geo-index. Maybe it was a more rudimentary version of it. Maybe it was based on something else, but they had something like that, right? To be able to do this flip of coordinates, to move the location of the encryption keys from Lake Point Estates to the Tibet. So I don't know. It's eye-opening, right, about the dynamics that have been shaping the world really for the last at least 30 years, right? That were invisible until that geo-index leaked from the Venezuelan intelligence because of their incompetence on September 11, 2024. Right? I think that was a turning point. That's what let us see, right, what's happening, and the extent of it, and the precision of this. But anyhow, it's also a signal for detection, because all we need to do is look for places that have these natural barriers, like that valley. For example, another place is Caracas, right? Like if you think of Caracas, the city, it has the same properties. And I was thinking about this the other day, like, I was thinking that Caracas has similar properties. I mean, even before finding this place today, this morning. Caracas is in a valley, right? It has a lot of natural barriers that make difficult interception. And logistically, it has only one way in and one way out. I mean, from La Guaira, right? And what I started thinking, with my train of thought, I didn't really think about this much, but my train of thought was that whoever designed the roads that lead to Caracas from La Guaira was somebody that was working for this network, because it's the same technique. Like it's one. It's. I mean, I see the design of the city and the access roads to the city, and I see things that I can recognize on this network, right? I mean, it's not a coincidence that there's only one highway that goes from La Guaira to Caracas, and from the only airport that is nearby to Caracas, and it's only one road, and it has only two lanes, right? It's a very narrow road, so that Caracas is a fortress, really. That's what it is, right? It's a fortress. It's something that it cannot be easily. Well, I mean, obviously, with the technology, it has changed, obviously, because Maduro was captured there, right, recently, and it took minutes. But maybe, right, when they designed the city, or the infrastructure of the city, in the 60s, in the 70s, it was a fortress, really. It's only that it's become weakened by the advances on, warfare and technology, things like that. But I guess I mean, that guy with that phone has been like kind of following me visually for a while. Um, but to give an idea of what I'm thinking, right? What I'm thinking is that I think, right, the Iranians had their hand on the design of Caracas and that corridor, Caracas La Guaira, because I see features in it that you know, but that's a strange. I mean, I'm just thinking about the historic precedents, right? Because it would be strange, because supposedly Venezuela before Chavez was a strong democracy. I mean, it had its problems. Don't get me wrong, and the economy was problematic and everything, but supposedly it was a strong democracy, right? But at the same time, I see all these features that suggest, like, the Iranians, had their hands on the design of the city in the 60s. So that seems contradictory to me. I don't know. Maybe I need to. Yeah, this sounds like something I need to ask the Gemini chat, right? Because to understand really what was the. It seems like there is a relationship there that I'm missing, that I don't understand, right? That is probably there, but I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't have the context, so I need to read more on that. But the signal for detection, to put it in short, is to find places that are protected by these natural barriers, that if you change one of the coordinates, they map to an important place or hub that is marked in the index, right? And that's important because that would allow people to see the encryption keys from other satellites. And if you get the encryption keys, you can get the communication. So they're not protected anymore. So that's why it's important. To weaken their secrecy, because that's what creates the impunity, right? That's the basis for the impunity, the secrecy, the private communications that they can have, and while at the same time they intervene the communications of everybody else. So that's this quick note that I wanted to add. All right, we're back. So I was just dropping off some packages at FedEx. They're going. So there's three packages. One package is going to the DOJ, the Department of Public Integrity, right? So the people the team that investigates corruption, official corruption. And there I'm sending the last four, I think, supplements that I haven't sent, and a copy of each book, Volume 1 and Volume 2 of the January docket, the hardcover editions. Because, the informant told me that they've been stopping some of the packages, if not all of them. So, I'm sending here the nuclear ammunition, right? So I did it at the airport because there's only one hub, and I sent it overnight. So this minimizes the probability of them of messing up with the packages, right? Now they will have to intercept it inside of the DOJ or at FedEx, which would be high liability, right? Because it's a huge company. Um, so that's one thing I sent. The other thing I sent, the second package, was a package to the Library of Congress. Again, sending a copy of the two first volumes of this book that documents corruption, and I sent this to to the legal library of Congress, right? To the library about law. So these judges, put their mark in history, in the law history of the country. And the same, right? I sent it through FedEx at the airport. And the third package is going to the IRS. Right? And this has all the filings that I've done with the IRS for the last, 2 months in one single package with wet signature. And, very legible wet signature and, going directly to the IRS via FedEx to see, how they were going to stop it this time. So that's what I did. So 3 vectors of attack in one. Let's see what they do with that. Now, as I was leaving, there was a gentleman with a plate that seemed a little bit odd. But anyhow, I'll talk more about that later. Yes. So for this segment, I'm going to talk more about the legal topics, right? So there's not many updates, but there's a few things that have been interesting that have happened recently and haven't. I mean, I've responded to them with legal documents and things that would leave a record, but I think it's maybe a good idea to also comment on those things, right? So I'm going to start by telling you the sequence, but so there was a sequence, right? But before telling you the sequence, I have to tell you that the Venezuelan informant that works in the Army intelligence warned me about this. This is how I responded so fast, because I already knew this was going to happen. I knew of this since last week. So I don't know, this is something that I don't have the tools to verify if this is exactly what happened on the other side, but I imagine, right, if the FBI or somebody else from the authorities looks into this, they would have a way to ask these people or to look at their phones to see if this is what happened, right? But this is what the informant warned me about last week. He told me about this last week, before it happened, right? So this legal sequence really started with a couple of comments from my former partner, okay? The comments were in one instance when she came, and I mentioned this before, right? In one of the demos, she came to the house. I think it was on Thursday, and with a child, and she started asking me. She started telling me that. No, sorry. The first comment was the following: that day, there was a day in which I got a flat tire, right? And because I don't have the phone number of AAA, and she's the one that has the card and everything. For AAA, I had to call her, right, to ask her to help me, right, to call AAA and to ask for a tow truck, right, to take the car home, so I can then solve the problem of the tire. So when I called her, that wasn't my birthday, actually. That was on February 17th. So when I called her, and she does the favor for me. Like, she calls AAA and the tow truck comes. See, here I'm surrounded by white vehicles again. You see? What are the chances of this? I mean, these 2 were already waiting for me, right? And now, see, 4 again. 1 on each side. 5. So I'm completely surrounded by white vehicles, right? And all of them, well, I think all of them have the V plate, the Victor, V as in Victor, right? Anyhow, so the six. This is a 6 vehicle. I also have this. It has 2 Ws. Yeah. So the grays are the Tigers today, and the whites are the Autos. Anyhow, yeah. So the sequence starts with her telling me that when I called her, right, to ask for a favor, she says, "See how I help you. I always help you. I mean, I'm more or less, like, this is what she said. I can't recall exact words, but more or less she said, see, I always help you. But when I ask you for something, you never do it for me." Like, something like that, right? So she was saying, and then I told her, listen, It's my birthday, right? And I'm in the middle of this situation. It's 8 p.m. Like, don't give me a hard time. Like, not at this moment, right? And then she was okay, okay, and then that she cut off the conversation. But that was the first element of according to the informant told me this like 2 days later, right? Yeah. So my birthday, I think, was on a Tuesday. She came on Thursday. The informant must have told me this on Friday, right? I think. Can't recall, but I think. Or Thursday, maybe even Thursday. So that was the first point in the sequence, right? When she made that comment, like, when I ask you, I help you, but when I ask you for something, you don't help me, right? The second point in the sequence was another comment by her. But again, like, all these things, if this is what they did, this proved that she is the only weapon they have at this point, right? Like, 'cause they consistently go to her to make this attack happen. These attacks happen. So the second thing was when she brought the child on Thursday, right? So she started asking me, well, telling me that that she made two comments when she was entering the house, that she wanted to retrieve something. Oh no, she said that she was feeling uncomfortable because I didn't give her access to the entire house. To which I replied, well, because we are going through a quote unquote divorce, and I don't want us to start fighting over stuff. Like, let's resolve those things on court, at the court, as you propose, right, with a divorce. And then she made a comment in response to that, saying, yeah, but this is still my house, and I have things in here, right? So this comment, this sequence, this conversation was the second point in the sequence. So if you put them together in front of a judge, right, look at what the judge will hear. He will hear, I'm always helping you, but you have me in a difficult situation. You never help me, right? And the second thing the judge will hear is, you have my things, and you have property of mine, and you don't want to give it to me, right? If you put these two things together, right, with the narrative of Troy Pickett, that she is in a difficult financial situation, and that the child is in danger, and they may be facing indigency. Of course, they're not going to say that to me, because they know that if they do that to me, I will file an emergency application with the Supreme Court, asking to protect the child by returning him to me, right? So they're not going to say that to me, but they could say that to the judge, ex parte, right? So that would justify Troy Pickett going on a Sunday to the house of Judge Oscar Telfair, really acting as a paladin of justice, right? Troy Pickett. And he will show these two transcripts to the judge, saying that the child is in danger because of the financial situation, and then the judge will sign something, right? Now, they didn't serve it to me or anything, but the dangerous situation here is, of course, the motions that he filed. He filed many things, right, before, like when they started planning this attack in January. He filed a motion for contempt, a motion for enforcement, a motion for new temporary orders, and a motion for income garnishing, which means that they could, withhold money from my employer. But I'm not employed by anyone, and they know that, right? But Pickett filed this order, and he redacted the name of the employer, because I don't have an employer, right? So what he did, he put a black circle, a black rectangle on it. See, this Penske truck is marking my location right now, right? You see the yellow thing. So he knows that I'm not employed by anyone, right? So what he did, he redacted the employer part of the form of this proposed order, right? So when he gets a signature, he can send that to my bank and have my account frozen, which is the goal, right? Like, the goal of this sequence is to have my bank account frozen, so I cannot keep shipping packages to the Department of Justice, so I cannot communicate with the IRS, so I cannot even pay for an appeal, right? That's the goal, to neutralize me, legally speaking, by freezing my account. With this sham order, which is a sham order for many reasons, but the most important one is that the court doesn't have jurisdiction, because there is a stay on the case. There is an automatic stay that got triggered by the third verified motion to recuse, which hasn't been resolved and is waiting for ruling by the Supreme Court. And all of them know that, right? But the informant warned me about this, right? So that's why when I saw that filing that the clerk did, so the next point in the sequence was the clerk, Beverly McGrew Walker, the clerk of the Fort Bend County Courts, that works for Judge K.P. George, really. Like, that's her boss, right? She filed. So what happened was, because I filed the document with the Supreme Court, the application, I served her with the application because she's the defendant in the federal case. So she took that filing and she filed it in the 387 court as if it was a petition to the 387 court, which is a tremendous abuse, and because that document clearly says Supreme Court of the United States. It doesn't say 387 court. And the respondents are judges. It's not me, right? So there's no way she could confuse this with that case. But that's what they did, right? They filed it. The reason for doing that was to create a pretext to say that I am actively litigating the case. And because of that, they can ignore the automatic stay that is mandatory. It's to give the judge a pretext, an excuse to go ahead and sign something, right? So what I did, I waited until Sunday to make sure that they couldn't do anything, right? Because the court is closed. So this happened on Friday when she filed on the 19th. When she filed that document, she misfiled the document. Right? The document was a service, personal service to her as a defendant. I'm not sending this to the court. But that's what she did, right? So I waited until Sunday and I filed a notice saying this filing of the clerk is fraudulent, right? Accusing the clerk of tampering with the docket directly, right? And I filed this with the 387 court as a notice. I'm not litigating anything. I'm not even responding. But I filed the notice. Immediately, within an hour, Judge Telfair updated the docket saying I signed the additional temporary orders. He doesn't specify exactly what he signs. So it's a mysterious order that is not in the docket. The order did not appear in the docket on Sunday or on Monday. But he signed something on Sunday, okay? On Sunday. And it's reflected in the docket as being signed on Sunday. Let's let him pass. The white truck. Okay. So he signed something, right? We don't know what he signed, right? Because it wasn't in the... It did not appear on the docket. But you know, like so this is the clerk that works for KP George, collaborating to create, acting maliciously to create a pretext for a judge to go ahead. And then Troy Pickett going on a Sunday to the house of the judge, I imagine, with a supposed emergency, right? Because, they're running out of money, supposedly. They have millions of dollars in crypto, but this is the story that they tell, for the record, right? And then the judge signs something, right? So what I did, but it doesn't end there. The other thing that they did, because of course now they have the problem that I filed a notice with this court telling them that the pretext is null, right? Because I'm telling the judge, and I served the judge directly with this notice, telling him, listen, I didn't file this, right? I'm not litigating this case. This case is a stay. It's clearly said in the notice. So what the clerk did then, a deputy of the clerk by the name Lin Chang or something like that. I can't recall the name right now, but it's the name. Look, the first name and last name sound Chinese, right? That deputy of the clerk altered the filing date and time of my notice, and she said it as if I had filed it on the 23rd, so the Monday, right? Yesterday, right? So she changed the date of that notice of filing from the February 22nd. I filed it at 9 a.m., so early in Sunday morning, right? And I did this on purpose, so they cannot say the judge signed the order at 6 a.m., right? But anyhow, she changed the time from Sunday, 9:33 a.m., I think it was, Central Time, to midnight, to make it look like it was filed and served on Monday, right? This replaced this document after the docket entry of the judge, right? So what she did was to move the timeline to explain that the judge did not know this information when he signed, right? Basically to create an escape route for the judge so he doesn't get in trouble with the DOJ, I imagine, right? That's the reason, right? So the judge is not accused of directly plotting with the clerk and with Troy Pickett. But now the clerk is tampering with the docket, and that is 20 years in prison, right? And I have the proof because when I served it, I got the certificate of service. And I got the email saying that I filed this document on Sunday the 22nd, not on the 23rd. And it has the timestamp, right? So the timestamp of the serving of the document and the filing, it contradicts the timestamp that the clerk put on the document, right? So this is hard proof of fraud, of really wire fraud, right? Because they are doing this, again, to deprive me of property, meaning to freeze my bank account, right? So this is really what you're seeing here real time is hard evidence and the commission of a wire fraud using the court's electronic record system as a tool for the wire fraud. I mean, this is super serious. This is one of the most serious things that they've done. But this shows the level of desperation that they have, right, to neutralize. So what I did in response is that I filed this evidence directly accusing the clerk of a criminal act with the Supreme Court of Texas. And I filed this yesterday. And now I took that filing and I sent it to the DOJ, right? So now the Supreme Court of Texas knows of the wire fraud. There's no other way to call this. This is wire fraud committed by a quasi-officer of the court in combination with the judge and the opposing counsel. So now, this is on the Supreme Court of Texas because I filed it yesterday. And now I took the filing with the Supreme Court of Texas and I sent it to the DOJ. So now tomorrow, the DOJ will know that the Supreme Court of Texas knows about the criminal activity. I mean, the criminal act of wire fraud by the clerk of the 387 with the judge and Troy Pickett. And so, so now, everybody knows that they committed this fraud, right? So now let's see what happens, right? That's what we have to do. Wait, to see what is the culmination of this saga. But you see, beyond the mechanics, so that's the fraud, right? That's the sequence. But you see, it all started with those two innocent comments of my former partner, and then Troy Pickett taking those things out of context, slicing them, and then showing them to a judge to create this pretext. But of course, it didn't work because I was warned by the Venezuelan informant, which on itself is even more damning because it means that the Venezuelan intelligence has this information before it happens. So it means that all of them are working for Diosdado Cabello. That's what it really means, right? That they are effectuating this wire fraud crime, which is a federal crime, on behalf of Diosdado Cabello. Because otherwise, how could I have known this? And you can see that I knew this because I responded to this within minutes, right? Within hours. Like, it took me, obviously the informant warned me, right? What I'm trying to say is that my speed of response of escalating this to the Supreme Court of Texas and then subsequently to the DOJ shows that I knew that this was coming, right? It's not easy to craft a document for the Supreme Court of Texas for something this complex, right? As I did, yesterday, in a matter of minutes. Anyhow, so that's what they did, right? So that's the next hole that they're digging for themselves. But beyond talking about the mechanics of the new federal crime. What I want to talk about more is about the higher level things, right? Like, you see, all this is possible because of the lack of oversight, the lack of federal oversight. You see, like if there was federal oversight, like if the federal court in the Southern District of Texas had not abdicated to the role, months ago in this case, the judge would see liability and he wouldn't do this, right? But the reason why he feels like there's no consequences is because he feels there's no accountability, there's impunity, right? Because he feels comfortable because of the impunity that has been created by the Communist Party of China causing the abdication of the federal court in Texas, in Houston, right? The Southern District of Texas, the Houston division. So this is how democracy and the personal freedoms of individuals is, subverted. That's how it decays. I think at this point it's obvious, right? Like, it should be obvious to anybody looking at this. This is the mechanism of decay of democracy. So you see, like, the judge, even knowing that there's an automatic stay, the judge and Troy Pickett as well, right? Like, they know there's an automatic stay. They know this is on the Supreme Court of Texas and also on the Supreme Court of the United States because I've served them, right? Um, but but they fear they fear no consequences. Like, they don't see consequences to them because they feel this impunity, right? Because of the subversion of the hierarchy of the courts that I talked about in the previous demo, in demo D112. And this is why that subversion of the order in the judiciary is so dangerous, right? So, like, what I'm trying to say is that, all of them knowing that there is an automatic stay. So the rule of procedure prohibits taking any action on the case. Knowing that this is on the Supreme Court of Texas, knowing that this is also on the Supreme Court of the United States, and the DOJ is informed of this, they still went ahead, right? So the judge is really acting. I don't know if you recall that. Uh, I don't mean to be disrespectful to the court, right? But I don't know if you would recall that viral. There was a viral clip. I don't know, like in the early 2000s. It was called the honey badger, right? It's a narrator giving a description of an animal called in English the honey badger, and he says something along the lines of, the honey badger don't care, the honey badger don't give a, like, and it's very funny. The clip is very funny. Well, this judge and Troy Pickett, like, they are honey badgers. Like, they don't care. Like, they don't care if they're breaking the rules of procedure, if this is in the Supreme Court, because they see no accountability, right? They see no risk, personally, because they feel like there is impunity. There is full impunity guaranteed by the Estado Cabello and the Communist Party of China. So this is why this mechanism that they created with this monstrosity is dangerous to democracy. Um, they become honey badgers, right? They sign anything. The judge signs anything, like, he doesn't care, right? Now, and well, but, to give you the full picture, right? What they have planned, right, is that they plan to justify this atrocity by saying it was done to protect the child because the child is facing indigency. But that's not. The rule of procedures are absolute. You can they're and I check on the pipeline. They are unbreakable. You cannot justify by any reason skipping the rules of procedure. Because then we wouldn't be living in a society. We would be living in anarchy. It would be subjective. There would be no rules, right? There wouldn't be rules. There would be guidelines if they were breakable, right? But that's what they're planning to do. What they really had to do, if they were really concerned about indigency or any other risk to the child, what they had to do was to file an emergency application with the Supreme Court of Texas to speed up the ruling on the motion to recuse, to then go ahead with the trial, right? And then have the appropriate judge, sign the appropriate order, right? This is what they really had to do. But of course, they're not going to do that because the Supreme Court of Texas is a shield. They're not going to drop the shield, right? They're not going to ask, the inaction of the Supreme Court of Texas, which at this point has taken, all in all, I don't know, since November 25th, so December, January, February, 3 months. Tomorrow is going to be 3 months, so 90 days, since that case was opened, and the Supreme Court of Texas has failed to rule in a single motion. They still haven't ruled on anything. They only dismissed the case summarily when I filed a complaint with the DOJ on January 8th. And then I filed a motion to reinstate emergency applications, and, they don't rule on anything, right? And it's being 91 days tomorrow. It's going to be 91 days tomorrow. So what Troy Pickett should have done, right? That this is what the law says. He should have filed an emergency application with the Supreme Court of Texas, asking them to hurry up. And because they're working together, they would have hurried up, right? If he really wanted to protect the child. But instead of doing that, what he did was to break the rules of procedure, right? Thinking that there's a justification for that. But I'm pretty sure, and I don't know, right? I'm guessing here, but I'm pretty sure that the DOJ will see through this as it is, right? A criminal act. Seeking to create a flaky pretext to commit it, right? To justify it. But it's really a criminal enterprise working, right? That's what it is. See, you see, the TSV 4455. This is the level 2. It's a Ford truck. It has the V. It's white. The V on the plate is white, and he's listening, right? That's what he's doing. and he's making making it look like he is having trouble driving. But you see, so that was the plan, right? That was the sequence. But in that sequence, you can also see desperation, right? Because I mean, they could have done this before. I mean, the judge could have signed that order last week, right? I mean, um, he could have signed it, on January 7th. Like, he had plenty of time, but he didn't do it because they know they can do it, right? But now they are in full, honey badger mode. And let me tell you why. There's a reason for this. The reason for this is that and I haven't said this because I was giving them the opportunity to incriminate themselves more, right? But this is what happened on the weekend. I think it was on Friday night. I can't recall the day, but I sent a new IRS form naming all the judges in the Texas judiciary system that are involved in this RICO enterprise, right? It's a total of 70 of them. Like, so I went all the way. Like, I went all in. Like, I mean, I have the data. I know that I have proof. I have documents signed by them committing crimes, right? So I reported all of them to the IRS, and I understand how the system works as well. So, my confidence is very high, as I'm used to. Yes, sorry, here's a total. I don't know if it's the one, just this. So, that red truck, TFW, is a marker. Like, you see the two red trucks, right? So that's a visual marker for the satellite to say, he's here. He's gonna take this exit. So this Yukon PYT 5520 and this F-150 TFM 1710. I think both end in 10. Okay. I mean, that's a lot of coincidences, right? I mean, location, color, type, and, well, not type, but really area seen from the space is the feature, right? And location and color and the two last digits of the plate are the same. Anyhow, what I was saying, yes, he could have signed that thing, last week. Okay, so yes. So the reason why they got into this extra panic mode, like this, ultimate level of panic, where they are now acting as honey badgers, legal honey badgers, right? The reason is that because I reported 70 judges to the IRS on Friday, I think it was, right? I was going to put it in a book, as a separate book, but then I decided against it because I thought, well, I'm going to give them the chance, because I know they're intercepting. For this, I use letter stream. So from my home, I can send the reports to the IRS from my home, right? I don't have to go out to do it. So it's over the internet. But they have letter stream compromise, and they can see what I send, right? And they stop it in some cases, right? If they think it's too dangerous, they stop it. Like what happened when I sent the report about the techno billionaires on December 12th, I think it was. They stopped, right? And the informant confirmed that. But that report, I resent it today, right? Just to make sure that it gets to the IRS. But anyhow, so if I had put it in a book and published it, then they could explain that they knew about the report because I published it on a book. So what I did not publish it on the book. I sent it privately, supposedly, right, quote unquote privately, via letter stream on Friday or Saturday. And I didn't say a word about this, right? And I've recorded multiple demos, and I haven't said. I recorded demo 112, which is the one that explains how the RICO enterprise of the judges works. And I did not mention the report of the IRS because I'm not going to give them any excuses to justify how they knew, right? Because then they could say, oh, we knew because he said it on the video. But I imagine when they saw that, they must have entered into panic and they started communicating, right? Using their phones for secret meetings, whatever. I don't know. I don't know exactly how they communicated, but whatever way, I'm sure it would leave a footprint that the FBI or the DOJ, I don't know who, but somebody will see it, right? They will see that they communicated about this thing. When that happens, that will prove that they intercepted that package, which is a private communication between the whistleblower and the IRS. And this is a protected activity protected by federal law. So this has high liability for all of them, for the 70 judges, which are the ones that are named on this form and are then taking this retaliatory measure of entering this new void order immediately after. So it's immediate. Like I filed this on Friday or Saturday through letter stream via FedEx. No, I sent it via, yes, I think it was FedEx or registered mail. I can't recall. I think I sent it through registered mail to create more liability, right? And then immediately, over the same weekend, Judge Telfair entered this order. And the clerk of the 387 court that works for KP George also altered the docket, right? Tampering with a record, with an official record, which is a serious federal crime, to justify or to excuse the judge signing that void order. But you see, it's a retaliatory act. It's hours after I filed this with the IRS, which they probably stopped because these are these are the leaders of the RICO enterprise seeing liability for themselves. They probably stopped that package. But now I resent it via FedEx at the airport, and the airport is a secure location protected by the airport security. So it's higher liability to I don't know, it would be like committing a crime inside of the airport, right? Inside of the secured area of the airport. So this is high liability, right? So that's why I designed it that way. But you see, so that void order didn't really happen because of concern for the child or all those things. It happened because I filed that report with the IRS. And if you think about it, it's the same thing that happened with Greg Abbott on late March, right? And Greg Abbott and Robert Mueller. The minute I mentioned their names to my former partner, the child was used as a weapon and the courts of Fort Bend County, right? The same thing. It's the same thing. So you can see that, this proves, in short, this proves that the leaders of this enterprise are the judges, right? Because otherwise, they wouldn't have taken this retaliatory measure on a Sunday. Now, the Sunday thing is important because what they're going to say, and I got this from the informant already, is that it's the system, right? The informant told me that he told me this a while ago, not on this instance, right? But that they because I think I questioned one of the sequence was that I questioned one of the filings that I did that they changed the time as well, right? And the explanation they were going to give if they get interrogated in that opportunity was that it's the system that changes the time because it doesn't allow filings to go through. Oh, I remember when it was. This was when the second verified motion to recuse, that they changed the time and they entered the void order on the 15th, right? So they were going to explain it as it's the system. The system, because Rinaldo is filing these documents at 9 p.m., our system doesn't allow timestamps on nights or weekends because the courts is closed. That's their excuse, right, for changing the time. But I have to tell you, this is obviously not true, and they shoot themselves in the foot by entering that order. In the docket, right? That docket update of Judge Telfair. I'm gonna let him pass because this 4 white truck is listening, right? This is a level 2, as you can see. You see, everybody left me. They need to create buffer to make sure the FBI is not listening, right? So this is XGJ. Let me get closer to get it. 1 second. It's X as in X-ray, G as in gold, J. 3, 4, 6, 7, or 87. So that's why they create distance. When they're gonna bring the level 2, everybody breaks away because they want the area to be visible to make sure that there's not another car that belongs to the FBI. You see, that's why they do it that way. But that kind of confirms the function of the vehicle, right? We know that that's a level 2. And this is because I'm talking about the judges, right, who are the leaders of the RICO enterprise. So that's the reason why they want to bring a level 2 like that Tacoma, white Tacoma up front at this very moment, right? It's important to bring the level 2. Anyhow, Yes. So the yeah, I can't recall what I was saying because I got distracted with the truck and the numbers. Um, oh yes, the timestamps, right? So on October 15, they were going to say that, but they shoot themselves on the foot in this opportunity because they entered the docket entry of the judge on a Sunday. So this clearly shows that this system is capable of recording timestamps on the Sunday. Like that's not a reason, right? That's not the that is not an excuse. This system is capable of that. They changed the time because they wanted to move the timeline of my filing to cover for the judge, to cover the crime, basically, to create deniability for the crime of the judge, right? So that's the reason why they changed the time. But when they come up with that excuse, I'm just saying this. People know that this is not the reason. This is not true. It's not. It's not a problem with the system. It's not a system limitation because obviously the system can record the docket entries of the judge on a Sunday. And you can see that in this docket, right? The judge enters something on a Sunday after I filed that notice. Um, so it's they shoot themselves on the foot with that one, I think, because they created evidence that this is not true, right? The excuse that they had prepared is not really true. But it also shows that the leaders of these are not Robert Mueller and Greg Abbott, are the judges, because they reacted in this way after I filed that report with the IRS naming all of them. That's what triggered this, right? This retaliatory action, right? Using again the courts, the child, and entering void orders. That's the mechanism, right? That's what they do, right? So they are basically acting as honey badgers, right? Using the law, legal honey badgers, with complete disregard for the federal authorities, like for the federal courts, because they created this subversion, this perversion here locally, right, where the federal courts are subjugated to the state judges, and that's why they're subordinates of them. So that's why they don't fear repercussions, right? Now, speaking of, like there's something that how do I say this? There is something that kind of, it's an observation, right? I don't know. And there's many possible explanations for this, right? But it's a pattern that I've noticed in the tech area. Okay, so I don't know if this is what's happening here. Could be, I don't know. And I've documented this, maybe a year ago in one of the books. Yes, pass. 1 second. Yes, it's in the tech. I when I documented it, I did it, and thinking more on the of the tech world, right? And I named this TTP something like the unreasonably young executive, something like that. And the pattern is that they will name somebody as an executive in these tech companies, like for example, I don't know, Andrew Phillips, right? Or in Goldman Sachs, right? Or at Google, you could think of Michael Schuper, right? And Hila Becker, right? Who, before the age of 30 had achieved a level in the technical ladder of Google that was appropriate for somebody that could be like 45 years old or 50 years old, right? Because, there's a correlation between, I guess the principle is that, if there is meritocracy, for an individual to organically achieve promotions in an organization, it takes time. Like, hard problems take time to solve. Like, you cannot solve these problems that require those levels of promotion at Google, for example, or at Goldman Sachs in 2 years, right? It's impossible. Even if you're a genius, because it doesn't depend on your horsepower. It depends on the complexity of the problem. And hard problems require multiple people to be solved, right? So even if you individually are a genius, that's not enough to solve a hard problem. That's what I'm trying to say. And these make it so that even if you're a genius, to get promoted at Google, you have to, work hard for a lot of years. Organically, right? But Hila and Michael, they kept giving each other promotions every 6 months, right? And they achieved, the consequence of this is that this leaves a footprint. And the promotions are necessary, so they achieve power and they can steal the code, right? For the PayPal mafia. The code and the queries and the voice queries and all that. But so this leaves a footprint, right? The footprint is that you will see individuals that are too young for the level, right? Like Andrew Phillips at Goldman Sachs. I think Andrew was like 32 or something like that, and he was managing director, right? At Google, Hila Becker and Michael Schubert, they were 29 and they were level 7, right? Or level 8. I think Michael achieved level 8 before turning 30. I mean, that's crazy, right? 8 out of 10, right? I mean, 10 would be Larry Page, was 10, right? And so Michael was 8, level 8 before the age of 30. Anyhow, this leaves a footprint. Now, the observation I have, and this is what I see, right? And this is also a way to undermine the organization, because you are putting, the Communist Party of China, right? They're putting somebody in charge that is not prepared, that is not mature enough to carry that responsibility, right? Because it takes time to mature, right? In an organization, as an individual, as an engineer, as a whatever, right? So anyhow, it's also a vector of attack, putting somebody in a position of power and decision making that they're not prepared to carry, right? It's a way for the the Communist Party of China of making that system or that country weak, right? Or weaker than it should be. Anyhow, the observation is about Judge Crane, because to be honest, I have the data in the pipeline, his date of birth and everything, like, because this is public data, like his, when he was born is in the Google Knowledge Graph. So I could look at the details, right? But what I can tell you right now is that I look at the photo and he looked unreasonably young. Like, if this was a tech company, he would have triggered, just by the way the picture looks, the official photo of the court, he would have triggered the unreasonably young executive flag in the regular pipeline. The legal pipeline, I have it configured differently because this is not a tech company, right? I'm not targeting a tech company with this. Yeah, this is a listener. Is XX7914. It's a Discovery White, and it has 2 X as in brakes. It's an X-ray in the plate, so that's an important L2. So anyhow, well, this is interesting. So a fire truck, well, not fire truck, but like a fireman truck, just distinctive color of red. Could be a marker, right? A visual marker for the satellite. Anyhow, yes. So he would have triggered the unreasonably young executive flag. And this is, and like, I don't know, right? Because I'm not an attorney. I don't know how these things are decided in the Department of Justice, or I don't know who decides who is the Chief Justice, right? But if you look at a court like the Southern District of Texas, it has a lot of very senior judges. Case in example, Judge Hittner, who has been in the job for almost 40 years in that specific job, right? So wouldn't it make sense that the Chief Justice is Judge Hittner? I don't know. Well, you could make the argument that, well, maybe he doesn't like being the judge. Maybe it's a managerial role that not every judge enjoys, right? And they prefer not to do it. It's possible, but, it's also a position of power, right? And people generally enjoy power. So it's hard to believe that none of the senior judges of the Southern District of Texas would have wanted that job. But the job was given to somebody that, just by looking at the picture, looks too young to be in that role, right? Especially compared to the rest of the justices that are in that court. So I don't know. It also could be that he's a person that ages very well, right? And the picture is not representative of his real age, right? Maybe he is 60 years old, but he just looks 40, right? but he looks younger than me, and he is the Chief Justice of this powerful court. So I don't know. It could also, I'm mentioning this because it could be a way of detecting this, the subversion, right? This could be a footprint of the subversion. Maybe a way to subvert this is to offering, to subvert the constitutional hierarchy of the courts. Is by offering the role of Chief Justice on the federal side to somebody who's unreasonably young and maybe corruptible because of that, right? Maybe their moral compass is not very well set because of their age, right? Again, they're not prepared for that role and for the responsibility that comes with that role because of the amount of money and children that are vulnerable to that position, right? So it could be something that it's important for the subversion to work. But if that's the case, then it would be also a signal for detection, right? But anyhow, telling you this because, of course, I reported George Crane to the IRS in the same way, right? In the same package. And now this thing happened, right? When they entered the void order, they ignored the stay, they changed, they committed wire fraud and tampering with a court record, all in a single pass, in a single motion, right? And again, just hours after, I reported the judges to the IRS. So, I think it's obvious, right? At this point, if anybody's watching this, it should be pretty obvious that, these are the leaders, right, of this RICO enterprise. Because otherwise they would have reacted, or they would have triggered that order before. They waited until they saw no escape, right? So this is like the last-ditch effort, right, of them trying to kill me. Figuratively speaking, right, on the legal front. But also, I have to tell you, the informant gave me a piece of information that goes to the physical front of, killing. So he told me the following, and this is, it's a serious thing, right? So I mentioned before that on January 25th, they tampered with the coffee at the Kroger store, right, where I bought that coffee. And this was hours after I wrote the name of Greg Abbott in the book that I'm working on, right? In the past, when I mention people that are important, they try to harm me physically immediately, right? Like, for example, when I mention Eduardo Hurtado, who is a very important Venezuelan intelligence unregistered officer here in Katy, who even is an author about books about intelligence. Like, he's overtly, he writes books about espionage and publishes them on Amazon. And he's an spy for Diosdado Cabello here in Katy. So what happened that time was that I sent him a text message saying, listen, I know you're working for the Cartel de los Soles. More or less, that's what I said, right? I know that you are an agent of the Seven. I sent him a text message because I had talked to him before in the following context. When the espionage escalated with Liana Technologies and they were attacking the websites and all that, and I realized that they had bought my house and my cars, the first thing I did was to try to find a consultant in corporate security. And I did a Google search, and his name came up. And I contacted him via text messages. So that's how I have his phone number since 2021, right? He offered a consultation, but he wanted to get access to the house. But in the circumstances I didn't feel comfortable. So I didn't pursue it, right? But now I have his phone number. Fast forward 3 years, I captured the UA index. I see that his house is marked in the UA index, that he has 3 million points in the UA index, and he's one of the top leaders of the Seven in Katy. So I sent him a second text message saying, listen, I know that you are in this, right? So my goal was to try to deter him because they were trying to harm me. I thought if he knew that I knew that he was trying to physically harm me, being in the United States, he would be afraid of being incarcerated, right? Of being put away for life. And he would stop, right? But of course, I didn't understand that they had this level of control over the federal system in this area, right? So that's why they don't get deterred, because they think they have impunity. You see how dangerous this is? They are willing to kill another person and they see no consequences to them because they think they have the federal under control, right? So this is the Judge Crane situation, right? The Judge Crane situation is dangerous because of this, because the Eduardo Hurtados of the world think they can kill anybody in that home. Uh, so anyhow, in that instance of Eduardo Hurtado, this was on October, I think, 2025. I sent him the text message. Within hours, they started trying to harm me using the water of the Valley Side Drive, using a easy fiber crew, and this is documented in the books. Okay, I'm not gonna repeat it here. If you're curious, please check it out in the books. But and then on January 25th, I mentioned Greg Abbott in the book, and they poisoned the coffee. Right, they tampered with the coffee that I bought at Kroger. This is also documented, right, in the book. And I'm gonna tell you the mechanism, right? So I'm gonna say this, so authorities are aware of how they do it. What they're doing is that they drive with, I call them in Spanish, el muñeco. El muñeco is like a loose translation would be a clown, right? Think about it as a clown, right? That's the loose translation. So they're driving around with this clown on a car, following me all day, every day, right? Until I stop to buy food, because they know that at some point I have to stop to buy food. If I run out of food, I will stop, right? So, but they don't know exactly in which store. Now, they control all the stores in Katy. That's why there's so few diversity of stores, of food stores in Katy. There's only Kroger's, H-E-B's, and Walmart. Like, there's nothing else. This is important for the network to be able to do this, right? If they need to harm somebody, they need to be able to control all the stores. And the way to control them is by accumulation. If there was 20 different types of food stores, I could buy food anywhere, right? But they have this under control this way. So anyhow, what they do is that they don't know exactly which store, and they can be poisoning the food in all the stores, right? Because they could harm the agent. That's mainly the reason. It's not liability, it's that they could harm themselves by mistake, right? So what they do is that they have the clone following me all day, every day, right? Until, and this is confirmed by the informant, this is exactly the TTP. The clone is in a car nearby, always, nearby. And if I stop, they take the clown out of the car. And they position the clown in the store. The last time they did it, so on January 25th, it was at the point of insertion of the clown was at the cashier. So the guy with that puts the groceries in the bag, that guy was the clown. And the job of the clown is to switch the food that I bought with tamper food at that point, right? So that way, because I took it from the shelf, I'm thinking that this is safe, right? Because I selected it in a pseudo random, I don't pick always the same type of food or the same brands But then they see what I took, and then they tamper with a copy of it, like an equal item. And the clown puts the tamper with item in the bag instead of the one that I picked from the shelf, you see? So that's how they do it. These days. Before, they would switch it at the shelves, and they would instruct the agents to not get anything from that shelf in that time, right? That I'm in the store. And then when I leave the store, they switch it back, right? But these days, it's with the clown. They have the clown following me in the car. So anyhow, going back to the topic of the judges, right? The informant also told me that the judges activated the Mueller MapReduce to execute this harm or this attempt at harm with the coffee again. But this is where it gets interesting, right? Because the last time they tampered with the coffee, and the coffee is a vector of attack because they know I drink coffee, right? And if you're a coffee drinker and you don't drink coffee, you get a headache, right? So in a way, this creates a necessity, like you have to buy the coffee, right? And this creates an opportunity for them. So until that point, on January 25th, I was drinking instant coffee. Okay, and the instant coffee is dangerous because you basically mix it with warm water, and they can tamper it with more things. There's more things that are compatible with that product because you don't boil it, right? It's just warm water. So they like the instant coffee the instant coffee a lot for that reason, right? Because it's more flexible for the things that they do with the substances that they put into the coffee. So what I did in response after January 25th, I stopped drinking instant coffee. And I had a lot of coffee at my home that was not instant, meaning that coffee that you have to brew, right? That you have to put in a pot. And this is kind of a long story, but so I started using that coffee, right, to not have to buy more coffee, and also to discontinue the use of the instant coffee, because I know it's more dangerous because I don't have to boil it, right? Um, so that's what I did, right? But now this creates a problem for me. The problem is that, when you brew the coffee, you have to discard the coffee that you already used, right? So I will have to put it on the trash. And I know that the trash is a vector of espionage that they use, meaning they collect your trash with GFL in my case, right? They go through the trash and they see what you have already eaten, and that way they can foresee what you're going to buy. Like if they know that I have, 3 boxes of cornflakes, I'm going to give you an example, right? And they see that I ate one this week, another one next week. When I go at that point, they will know that I'm about to buy cornflakes, right? So they know that they have to tamper with the cornflakes. See, they can foresee. So I cannot put in the trash the packages or the things that I eat, because, not immediately, because they know what I will need. And that creates an opening, right? But this is where it gets interesting. For the liability aspect of this, right? So what I was doing for the last few days is that when I make coffee, I discard the used coffee after I brew it on the backyard next to the door. So this is a point in the backyard that it's only visible from the house of this gentleman by the name of Bremholm, Bremhaolm. So this is only visible from the 2218 Britton Ridge Drive house. The only property that has visibility into what I'm doing on that part of the backyard is that house. So what I was doing very discreetly, I would discard the coffee, I don't know what to call it, like the coffee grounds, the grounded coffee after I brewed it. I put it on the grass, basically. I discarded it there, right? To not have to put it in the trash, to not alert the Venezuelan intelligence that I was brewing coffee, because then they would start poisoning the non-instant coffee, obvious, right? So to not give them that piece of intelligence, I was doing this. Well, surprise, surprise, the informant told me, I think it was on Saturday, I can't recall. That day that I ran in the backyard recently, so I think it was on Saturday, and it was after I reported the judges to the IRS, that now the SEBIN had put into motion a plan to poison the non-instant coffee with the clown. The same thing, right? But now the non-instant. So they already knew that I had switched to non-instant coffee, even if I had not put a single piece of this coffee in the trash. So this is important for liability calculation, because this means that Bremholm, the owner of the 2218 Britton Ridge Drive house, gave this piece of information, or facilitated in some way, via installing a camera on his property. I don't know, right? But his property made it possible for the Venezuelan intelligence to understand that I was brewing coffee. And this is important to kill me, right? It's an important piece of information that the Venezuelan intelligence needs to be able to carry out the execution. And, for the crime of reporting the judges to the IRS. So, because that apparently carries a death sentence in this society, right? If you report the judges to the IRS, it's death sentence immediately. No trial, execution with coffee. So, but for this to happen, they needed that piece of information, right? So and this is a very serious crime, like trying to kill a federal informant or a whistleblower, right? I think this is level 43 in the federal guidelines of sentencing. So this is life in prison without parole. And, Bremholm, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. So the owner of the real owner, not like the fake identity they have on that house, but the real owner of the 2218 Britton Ridge Drive is the one that gave that piece of information. So he is a co-conspirator, right, on this plot. So, I think that, that elevates the liability for him to potentially life in prison, right? So that's why I'm mentioning that. So of course, what this means is that now I cannot drink coffee, right, at all, because it's too predictable. Like it's too predictable that I'm going to eventually buy coffee. So see, the one on the back is the level 2. That's like, and I think it could be even a police officer. I mean, it has this searchlight on the side. Yes, the level 2 is a police officer. Wow. 1617694. Bingo. I mean, let me tell you why I said he's a level 2, because he triggered the behavioral models on the software that I'm running. And speaking of software, I have a mini project that I want to do. I want to put more computing power on the car to be able to do more real-time predictions, right? But that car triggered what I have with the computing power I have. It triggered the behavioral model, and it was a police car, and it was waiting behind a dark car that was acting as level 1. So that's interesting. And what is more interesting of all this is that this incident happened with the police car when I'm talking about that's life without parole sentences and the judges at this moment, right? And the plot to kill me for reporting the judges to the IRS. So I don't know. It just it's I don't know. It's I lose the ability to speak, really, when I try to compute the level of liability that is in this situation right now. It's just hard to compute. I think I need a computer to be able to understand the level of liability that there is on this. But yes, so that is the plan, right? It's the coffee, it's with the coffee, and it's with the cloud that they have, one of these cars next to me all day. I imagine, right, at this point they have multiple clowns because of the level of risk they see. They are not going to be, having the same clown follow me all day. I imagine it's partitioned by area. So the clowns are probably sharded, right, in the same way as the charter vehicles. So it's not one clown. It's a shard of clowns that they have. Now, I don't know how big is the shard. It could be 10 clowns. Could be, I imagine, right? 10 clowns would be enough to partition them in a way that is not detectable, right, or not obvious. But yeah, so that's the situation, right? So of course I cannot drink coffee anymore because I risk execution for reporting the judges to the IRS. Basically, that's the state of the union at this point. So with that, I hope that authorities get this in some way, one way or another, and that they take action, really, because this situation is escalating to a point where they are going to eventually harm me, right? So please, Well, with that, I'm going to close this demo, and I'll see you on the next one.
Okay.